Right now, London has showered Ukraine with mega missiles. Britain has played its trump card, causing hysteria in the Kremlin. A decisive move against Putin, Zelenskyy has urgently headed to the US. A powerful decision from Trump for Ukraine is already on the table. Incredible weaponry is on its way to Ukraine. Trump is dropping a bombshell. When and where it will strike will change everything. A sensation. Czechia has done something incredible, all for the armed forces of Ukraine. A conveyor of death has been launched. Ammunition is being delivered by the ton. This will turn the front upside down. Europe is rewriting the rules. Putin is in a stupor. Crimea is paralyzed. The Ukrainian armed forces are tearing through Russia's reserves. Azov is wiping out the occupiers. This is a turning point. Trump and Zelenskyy in the White House. There will be an agreement. Erdoğan is entering the game. Turkey could upend Moscow's plans. A tank collapse. Russia's armor is falling apart. This is not a rehearsal. This is the final stretch for Putin's machine. The Russians have been driven from the front line. A mass enemy retreat. Putin's army is falling apart before our eyes. This has never happened before. All this and more in our upcoming report. Hot spot. Checkmate, Putin. Britain has turned the game around. London has showered Ukraine with hundreds of missiles. The Kremlin is in panic. These munitions are capable of wiping Russian planes and drones off the face of the earth. But this is only the beginning. Britain is preparing a decisive blow against the Russian army. What else is being sent to Ukraine, and why is Moscow already trembling with fear? Stay tuned to find out.
The United Kingdom is strengthening Ukraine's skies. Hundreds of missiles for air defense systems were delivered 5 months ahead of schedule. This was reported on the British government's website during the visit to Kyiv by the Minister for Defense Readiness and Industry, Luke Pollard.
Developing industrial partnerships is important so that we can learn from their experience and together build the industrial base necessary to defend the United Kingdom. To deter our adversaries and support Ukraine.
We're talking about light multi-role missiles, LMM, which are produced as part of the UK's military support program for Ukraine. This is a high-precision missile, measuring 1.3 meters in length, weighing only 13 kilograms and with a range of up to 8 kilometers. It is equipped with a laser infrared guidance system. And its 3-kilometer fragmentation warhead with a proximity fuse makes it effective against both aerial and ground targets. The missiles can be launched from various platforms. Ground-based launchers such as MANPADS, the Stormer SAM, HVM or Rapid Ranger, as well as from helicopters and ships.
As illegal Russian aggression continues to intensify, European countries must unite and strengthen their support. Ongoing industrial cooperation, both with our government colleagues and with international allies, remains the only way to ensure a safe and prosperous future for the people of Ukraine.
British support is not limited to supplies. At the same time, a new major phase of industrial cooperation has been announced. A package worth £1.6 billion, which is approximately $2 billion, is intended for integrating LMM missiles into Ukraine's air defense system and for expanding joint production capacities. According to Luke Pollard, the total volume of UK military aid in 2025 will reach £4.5 billion, or $5.6 billion. This is the record figure for London in its entire history. And now another key element of cooperation. The United Kingdom and Ukraine are launching joint production of interceptor drones. The project could start in the coming months. We're talking about a production line capable of manufacturing around 2,000 interceptors per month. Such production rates are exactly what's needed to counter massive swarms of Shaheds and other large-scale attacks by combat UAVs. The first production lines will be set up in the United Kingdom, but the project's structure is designed to be flexible so it can quickly respond to the needs of the front and relocate capacity closer to Ukraine if necessary. The British side promises to contribute development, research expertise, and modern manufacturing technologies that Ukrainian factories currently lack. This is not just a supply contract, it's an attempt to create sovereign capabilities for Ukraine. Equipment, technical support, training, joint research and development, supply chains. In parallel with the UK, the Netherlands also discussed a memorandum on joint drone production. European partners are building industrial cooperation that is meant to function not as a one-time delivery, but as a series of production lines, services, and training.
That is, in terms of drone quality, we have long since caught up with the so-called Russian, but in reality, Iranian Chinese Shaheds. The question was whether we would be able to scale up production, just as it was done for Russia, Iran, and China. It turned out we could. So when it comes to diving drones, we are now close to parity, not only in terms of the quality of the machines, but also in their quantity, which is very important in this case. After all, this is not the kind of war that can be won with pinpoint strikes alone. Here, the sheer scale of the strikes is what matters. It's necessary to... When we're talking about figures like a 20% reduction in Russia's entire oil refining industry, that's when such scale is needed. So, we finally reached that scale.
Other allies of Ukraine are also preparing new support measures. The United States plans to continue supplying advanced weaponry, including air defense systems, artillery, and cruise missiles, as well as strengthening the defense of Ukraine's infrastructure. According to preliminary plans in 2025 to 2026, the volume of military aid could amount to several $billion. Among European countries, Germany and France are preparing to supply armored vehicles and ammunition, as well as expanding the training of Ukrainian military personnel at their training centers. Poland and the Baltic states are considering the possibility of providing additional types of weapons and equipment, as well as conducting joint exercises to enhance the combat readiness of Ukrainian troops. In addition, the allies are developing plans for the long-term integration of new air defense systems and artillery complexes, so that Ukraine can build a resilient defense network and prepare for possible escalation from Russia. As part of humanitarian support, there are plans to expand programs for infrastructure restoration, medical assistance, and the training of specialists to work in crisis conditions.
Urgently, Tomahawks aimed at Moscow. Trump made an unexpected statement. A mega missile is already on its way to Kiev. This is not a threat, this is a real bomb under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. When and where will they strike, and what is Putin afraid of? Watch the sensational details right now.
It seems I've already made a decision regarding Tomahawk missiles for Ukraine.
2 phone conversations in one day between Zelenskyy and Trump.
And of course, this gives us signals and hope that with the same pressure Trump applied in the Middle East for the sake of peace, he will also be able to put pressure on Putin to stop the war in Ukraine. I sincerely hope for this, and I have already spoken about it with the president.
As a result, Trump threatened the Kremlin with supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine.
I can say, Putin, listen, if this war is not resolved, I will send them Tomahawks. I can say that. Tomahawk is an incredible weapon, very offensive. And honestly, Russia doesn't need that. They don't need that. I can say this to him. If the war is not resolved, we can do it.
Nevertheless, the US president did not specify whether an official decision has been made to send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. So what could this mean? Is Trump simply trying to intimidate Russia, or is he warning them?
This is happening first and foremost because today we learned that the United States is helping Ukraine select targets for strikes. This means that it's not just verbal pressure on Putin to enter peace talks, but actual actions are being taken. That's why I don't rule out at all that Trump could actually deliver the Tomahawks. That's the kind of person he is. He really could do it.
Trump is probably waiting for the Kremlin to finally decide to make some concessions. But will he wait in vain?
The topic of Tomahawks is causing us extreme concern. President Putin has already spoken about this. This weapon is special. It can be either non-nuclear or nuclear. It has a long range. It's a serious weapon, but at the same time, it can't change the situation on the front lines.
And while the topic of Tomahawks is causing some anxiety in the Kremlin, Lukashenko has already sorted everything out. Well, of course not. Those missiles would be flying into his own country.
I think we need to calm down about this. As I've said before, maybe even to you, our friend Donald has a certain tactic when it comes to dealing with the most pressing issues, first and foremost.
Wow, that's something else. And now he's cozying up to Trump, calling him a friend. So who is closer to the potato magnate? Is it still Putin, or is it now Donald's friend?
Lukashenko wants to reclaim the position where he can say, I can do this, I can even host negotiations myself, and in general, I can talk to anyone, including this one. Basically, he's trying to show that he's such a big shot, the main negotiator. I can bring them all together. I think that's what this is about.
But the question remains open. Will the Kremlin's rhetoric change after Trump's statements?
The Russian side continues to say that we are ready for a peaceful settlement. And we also hear that Trump keeps insisting on the need to sit down at the negotiating table. From this, we conclude that he still maintains political will. But the Europeans and the Kiev regime are showing a complete unwillingness to do anything in this regard.
It couldn't have been any other way. Of course, the Kremlin will blame everyone around except itself.
One precise strike on Novo Ogaryovo and everything will change. World politics will change. That's why, like all of Ukraine, I can't wait for those tomahawks.
And the main Kremlin character, Medvedev, is outright threatening Trump, stating that the transfer of missiles could end badly for everyone, including the President of the United States.
Putin's main task, the one he assigns to Medvedev, is precisely to run around and threaten everyone. So that if anything happens, he can say, well, he's just my deputy. Well, yes, he says, what do you expect? So that's why Medvedev is carrying out the tasks assigned to him by Putin, not by anyone else. So yes, we need to understand that since he's saying this, it matches the messaging of what Peskov is saying.
Nevertheless, Russian media hesitated. It seems they're worried. Well, of course. Unlike Putin, they have nowhere to hide.
They're not even trying to hide it. Moreover, they're already marking targets on the map. Targets that could be hit by those very tomahawks. Just look. Russian military infrastructure sites within the range of Tomahawk cruise missiles in the Russian Federation.
Putin will decide everything. And what have you forgotten? You have air defense, but no taxes.
Our response is to strengthen the air defense system of the Russian Federation.
Also, besides the Tomahawks, Trump declared that he had ended the war in Gaza, which is confirmed by his presence in the Israeli parliament.
To be continued in the next exciting installment.
Well then, another resolved conflict added to Trump's personal record. Maybe next year he'll get lucky with the Nobel Prize?
Sensational! A bomb has exploded. Czechia burst into war with Russia. The conveyor of death has been set in motion. Streams of ammunition will flow straight to the front from Czech warehouses. Full control over supplies, independent reserves, and logistics. Europe is changing the rules of the game. This is a strategic upheaval that could bury the Kremlin's plans. Don't miss the details. Coming up next.
Ukraine and Czechia are creating their own Ramstein. The goal of our country is to deepen this cooperation through the signing of an intergovernmental agreement and a support program for affected enterprises. An industrial Ramstein, noted Oleksiy Sobolev, Ukraine's Minister of Economy, Environment and Agriculture.
Not only the Czech defense industry, but also the country's political leadership at the moment of these so-called technical initiatives is a key element in the material and technical support of Ukraine's defense forces.
The Embassy of the Czech Republic in Kyiv reports that Czechia supports Ukraine's democratic transformation and Euro-Atlantic integration, both in the political sphere and through concrete projects and initiatives. For the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, Ukraine is a priority country for transformational cooperation, a country of special focus within Czech development cooperation, as well as a beneficiary of humanitarian aid.
At present, according to the Czech initiative, around 2 million artillery shells have already been delivered. This has significantly strengthened the position of Ukraine's defense forces both in the moment and in counter-battery warfare, and accordingly the effectiveness of their firepower. In relation to the Russian occupiers, the Czech side has delivered around 70 tanks for the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine. T-72, M1, more than 140 infantry fighting vehicles, multiple launch rocket systems, and accordingly, about 4.5 million rounds of ammunition have been delivered, including artillery shells. Systems and rocket munitions plus firearms.
Despite the war in Ukraine, 220 Czech companies remain in operation. Also, as part of the cooperation, Ukraine plans to provide the Czech Republic with a list of the industrial equipment needed by enterprises that have suffered as a result of military actions.
On the territory of this country, repairs are carried out on damaged armored vehicles and weapon systems. In addition, artillery shells are produced here, primarily of Soviet caliber, 152 millimeters. These are the enterprises that have remained in the Czech Republic since the days of the Warsaw Pact. And considering that about 70% of the weaponry used by the armed forces of Ukraine is still of Soviet design, this support is invaluable. This is assistance from this country.
Within the framework of the Czech initiative, the processes of purchasing and delivering ammunition are being optimized.
The Czech Republic has generously provided the Ukrainian defense forces with both essential airplanes and versatile helicopters from the aviation units of its own formidable armed forces. At this very moment, The primary and most significant initiative of the Czech Republic is precisely the crucial creation of so-called coalitions, which are primarily and strategically aimed at substantially improving the essential capabilities of Ukraine's defense forces in effectively countering the ongoing Russian aggression.
The historical memory of the Czech people remembers well the disaster that Russia can bring to foreign lands. That is why the Czechs support Ukraine, which is now fighting the aggressor, preventing the Russians from seizing both their own country and all of Europe.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now. Urgent. Crimea is paralyzed. The Ukrainian armed forces are tearing through Russia's reserves. Shock, a bloody failure for the Russians. Azov is driving the enemy from the front line. Sensational. Trump and Zelenskyy in the White House. Talks about deadly tomahawks for the Ukrainian armed forces. This could become a historic geopolitical victory for Ukraine. And that's not all. Erdoğan bursts into the game. Turkey could turn the tide of the war. All the latest events you might have missed. Watch now.
The fate of the tomahawks will be decided this week. Trump is ready for anything.
We are fully prepared for nuclear war with Russia.
And right on cue, Medvedev is on the line. A new round of nuclear threats was sent in Trump's direction.
He stated that supplying tomahawks to Ukraine could end badly, and he's threatening not Kyiv, but Trump personally. It seems the expert is having a rough time again. The morning after a hard night.
One more resolved conflict in Gaza to Trump's personal record.
Trump actually ended the war, though it happened after he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. So there was really no need to try anymore.
A ceasefire was signed in Egypt, though it was done without the participation of the parties to the conflict.
The official ceremony was attended by the leaders of Egypt, Qatar, the US, and Turkey. It was these countries that acted as mediators in resolving the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
Trump is once again risking his career. And his marriage, too.
If you call a woman beautiful in the US, that's the end of your political career. But I took the risk. You don't mind being called beautiful, do you? Because you really are.
But not sweet, not a single bit. Trump confessed his love for the fantastic Putin's Lyuba.
We have Hungary. Oh, Victor. Where's Victor? Victor, we love Victor. You're just fantastic, you know that. I know many people don't agree with me.
Priorities have been set. Orban bows, but not to Putin, actually to Aliyev, the leader of Azerbaijan. And so, finally, in Russia, they eventually started talking about the truly main and significant achievement, which was quite remarkable.
Of the special military operation. Beauty, in its most fundamental and captivating form, is a profound essence that deeply resonates within us.
It will save the world. But it's definitely not the promise of the so-called DNR. Get ready.
All right, let's start our contest. By the way, I'll do the anthem. That is, my vocal cords are already warmed up. I'll sing the Russian anthem. Get ready.
Feodosia is on fire for the second day. It seems there will be nothing left of the oil depot.
At least 3 fuel tanks are burning. Footage of the flames has shocked the internet. It's too late to put it out now.
And Russians are sounding the alarm. Stability according to plan. Their own people are profiting. Russia could attack NATO sooner than Europe thinks.
Now experts are warning about little green men at NATO's borders. This is a new stage of hybrid warfare, where the Kremlin is trying to test the West's reaction and prepare the ground for future military moves.
Well, here's a surprise. Ankara has unveiled its new toy.
Turkey has showcased a weapon from which there is no escape.
Looks like it's time for Putin to head to the bunker.
It can strike both sea and land targets at a distance of over 275 kilometers.
A new level of military aviation is emerging in America as well. Meet the helicopter of the future.
Fully autonomous and pilotless, it is capable of lifting up to 33 tons of cargo. This is a next-generation Black Hawk designed for reconnaissance, logistics, and strike missions.
Tough luck, it just wasn't meant to be. 16 units of enemy armored vehicles against a single Azov corps. The result, -9 IFVs and 3 tanks.
Russia's tank disaster. Putin's army is on the brink. The Kremlin is in shock. The Iron Fist has turned into a pile of scrap metal. There aren't enough tanks, crews are fleeing, and chaos and panic reign on the front lines. Why does Russian armor no longer save the occupiers? And how could this collapse become the end of the war? Stay tuned.
Pilots from the 3rd Assault, using 2 drones, destroy a Russian tank that was hidden in a forest belt. One of the drones flies right into the barrel. Videos like this showing a tank being destroyed have become quite rare over the past year, since the Ukrainian armed forces have knocked out a huge amount of the occupiers' equipment. The Russian army is essentially forced to carry out assaults on foot or on motorcycles.
They're running out of armored vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, and tanks, so they have to put infantry simply on motorcycles and on civilian unarmored vehicles.
Since the start of the full-scale invasion, the Ukrainian armed forces have destroyed more than 11,000 Russian tanks. These are figures from the General Staff of the Ukrainian Command. Only a third of the tanks that were there before the invasion of Ukraine remain in the reserves of the armed forces of the Russian Federation.
After 3 years of war, Moscow has depleted its tank reserves to such an extent that, according to reports, they are almost exhausted. Although the Kremlin insists there are no problems with replenishing tanks, notably, in 2022, Russia's tank reserves were stored at 24 bases across the country. And today, only 9 such facilities remain in operation. Peter Suchio, military observer.
The Russian Federation has significantly slowed the use of Soviet-era tanks on the front line, as the gray zone is filled with Ukrainian UAVs for which tanks are easy prey. The data on the loss of a large portion of tanks in the war with Ukraine since December 2022 is also confirmed by the American Institute for the Study of War.
Russia still has 46% of its pre-war tank reserves, 42% of its pre-war infantry fighting vehicle reserves, and 48% of its pre-war armored personnel carrier reserves. Images of 8 Russian military depots apparently show that Russia has emptied most of its vehicle storage facilities. A social media source estimated that Russia is likely to exhaust its remaining stockpiles of tanks and armored vehicles by the end of 2025. Russia may have additional armored vehicles and tanks in covered storage that are not visible in satellite images.
The Russian Federation is now facing a dilemma. There are practically no reserves of Soviet armored vehicles left. About 60% of the Soviet armored vehicles that were in long-term storage depots on the territory of the Russian Federation have been effectively destroyed by Ukrainian defense forces.
Over more than 3 years of war, the Kremlin has withdrawn most of its tanks from storage. These vehicles went from storage to depots and then to the front lines, where they were destroyed, captured, or abandoned. The resources and efforts spent on restoring these vehicles did not pay off and did not deliver the desired results on the battlefield. Now, there simply isn't the necessary amount of equipment anymore.
According to the latest intelligence data from open sources, as of today, Russia has only 2,887 tanks in storage, and more than half of them are in poor condition. Less than a quarter of them could be classified as fit for use on the battlefield. Fewer than 100 T-80 tanks were considered relatively modern, while the rest included outdated T-62, T-64, and T-72 tanks. Early models.
The Russian Federation is capable of reviving between 1,200 and 1,400 Soviet-era armored vehicles, but not of producing new ones. According to the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, the production of new tanks by the Russian Federation is about 180 to 200 units, and given the amount of armored vehicles being destroyed on the line of contact with Ukraine's defense forces, this is just a drop in the ocean.
Taking into account figures from various sources, the question now is not whether mothballed Russian tanks will appear on the battlefield, but when this might happen, and in general, whether it is possible in the necessary quantities.
Urgent. A hellish catastrophe in the Russian Federation. Soldiers are fleeing by the thousands, the front is collapsing. A disgrace for Moscow, desertion is out of control, Ukraine is pressing, the occupiers are fleeing. See all the shocking details in the report.
I know about many violations. People were wiped out, I know of cases, I know where the bodies are buried. And specifically, an order was given about me to have me wiped out so I wouldn't make it out from the combat position.
This convict occupier deserted his post after an order was given not to let him leave the position alive. He left together with another soldier who had received a similar order. It was the only way to stay alive.
I was beaten precisely when I first went to Sochi. They caught me and they beat me very brutally with the bucket. And with a stick, they shoved me into the pit. I left the pit for a combat mission while still in handcuffs.
What happened to this occupier now is unknown, but the video was posted in Z channels as a farewell message before death.
The guys really did run away because it's extremely hard to get out of there alive at all.
And this is already the wife of the occupier Ivan, a Russian soldier who was initially declared a soshnik, slacker. He refused to go on a mission after spending 2 days evacuating a fellow soldier from the front line. After that, he was ordered to move out with other soldiers to monitor the troops so they wouldn't flee their positions. Ivan himself complained that many refused to follow orders and desert.
The guys just can't get through any further. Today I sent out a group of 6 people, but only 3 came back. And now they just sit there and cry. We're scared, we won't go, we don't want to die. They can't get through this open area. I'm just sitting here myself, I say, I just don't want to push anyone.
As a result, Ivan was eliminated. As for the Sochniki, their numbers in the Russian army are only growing as they are treated like cannon fodder. And many choose to live in freedom, even on the run.
That is, I am a saboteur. My specialty. There are 6 of us left. There were 70. 6 left. There is a road of life here, from Bakhmut to Chasov Yar. It's so hard to get through it. You drive over corpses, there's no road. The van goes like this. You realize who you're driving over.
The Russian soldiers themselves say that the reason for such huge losses is, in particular, lack of preparation.
They recruit those who don't know how. Millions are spent on their training. They arrive and they're immediately turned into Cargo 200.
There's another option, to surrender. But the Russian command has made considerable efforts to intimidate their subordinates. For example, they vividly describe supposed torture in Ukrainian captivity.
They say they fill your mouth with foam cut off your balls. Well, I was also afraid to go because of that. They rarely talk about the balls, but the foam, constantly. But when I crossed over, I said, guys, you're not going to foam me or anything, right? They said, what are you talking about? What foam? That's what they say where we're from, yeah. But here they told me, calm down, everything will be fine. Let's go to Camille. And they treated me well.
That's why the occupiers choose the only path they see, unauthorized abandonment of their posts. According to leaked documents from the Russian Ministry of Defense, since the so-called special military operation began, about 50,000 people have deserted the Russian army. And that's just the official number. In reality, things are much worse. But even if you just look at the documents, you can see a worsening trend. In recent months, the number of cases of unauthorized absence has increased. For example, in Grozny, there are now 17% more such cases than a year ago. And it's highly doubtful that the situation will improve for Putin's army.